President Trump boosting Brexiteers during his trip, also wanting to build a wall with Mexico, impose tariffs on them. How has this rising wind of protectionism, nationalism affected the dynamics within the United Nations?
Well, within the UN, I think you have people who very passionately believe in the cause of multilateralism, but don't quite know how to go about getting the best out of the UN for the world as it is today. And you have a lot of criticism of the Security Council that it isn't really doing the job it was set up to do for the maintenance of international peace and security. And you do see the rise of many more countries on the world stage, which in itself is a good thing. But as you suggest, it means there are more competing equities that need to be taken into account on every issue.
When you have all of this criticism and undermining of these multilateral organizations, whether it's the United Nations, NATO, or the WTO, and you have increasing tensions, whether it's geopolitical or trade, between the US, China, US, Mexico, Europe, Japan, how does that affect the purpose of mediators, and when can they actually do their role? Can they play their role as mediators in these conflicts?
I think they can. I wouldn't say that NATO is being undermined or that the UN is being actively undermined. I think you have a great power dynamic at play at the moment with a more aggressive Russia and a more assertive China, and that exerts its own control. We like to think of ourselves in Britain as a free trading nation, so we just go about the business of dealing with countries who don't play by the rules. We prefer to do that through the World Trade Organization. But it does mean people need to be more willing to look at the longer term and take a strategic point of view rather than a short-term one.
How will the role of the UK change once Brexit happens or leading up to Brexit?
I think in the UN will be a more visible, more active stage for the UK once we leave a big organisation like the European Union. But we like to think of ourselves as multilateralists. We like to think of ourselves as really interested in the rule of law, as free traders, as believing in working with others to enhance security and prosperity. We're a leading funder of the UN. We're number 3. America's number 1. We also spend 0.7% of our GDP, some 13 billion a year, on overseas development assistance. So those things will continue. So we'll still be here. We'll still be very active. How
will your decision-making change once you break away from the European Union? And do you sometimes worry about the legitimate role and the value that it can provide to the 50-member Security Council?
I don't worry about the Security Council at all, because Britain isn't on the Security Council by virtue of being in the European Union. We were one of the original members, one of what's called the permanent 5 members, and that came about as a result of 1945. I think the biggest difference is on trade. As a member of the European Union, at the moment, we negotiate on trade deals through the European Union. When we leave, of course, we'll be independent, and we'll be negotiating deals with the European Union, but also with other countries, hopefully with the United States.
Will that put at risk the need to prioritize, say, other issues like climate change, human rights, if you're so focused on trade deals that are essential for the survival of the UK?
I don't think it will. It's not our intention that it should. We want to stick to our values. Those include climate change, free trade. They definitely include human rights. A lot of free trade deals have human rights clauses. I don't think Britain will be at a disadvantage any more than, say, Canada or Australia or the US itself is at a disadvantage.
President Trump, in his visit to Europe, also talked about always there being a chance of a conflict with Iran. Can the international community still save the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, we hope so. We want to encourage the Iranians to stay in that nuclear deal. We believe that's the best thing for our security, but we also believe it's the best thing so we don't have proliferation of nuclear weapons. So we will be encouraging Iran to stay in. To that end, Europe has taken certain steps on the financial side, not crossing US sanctions, but trying to find a channel for humanitarian goods to get to Iran.
How challenging would it be if the Trump administration does go ahead and sanctions Instex, the vehicle that would actually keep trade open between Europe and Iran?
That would be difficult, and we would really urge them not to do that. Instex has been set up, and the administration, the US administration, have been kept fully in the loop. It's there for humanitarian goods primarily. It's there to encourage the Iranians to stay in the deal. What I might say, though, is that where we do agree with President Trump is exactly as your clip showed with President Macron. We do agree that we need to work together about Iran's destabilizing influence in the Middle East region, and that's something on which Europe and the President are united.